I'd love for you to just kind of reflect on, let's just take the 5+ years in your marketing leader role at Square. Anyone who's certainly in the US, you know Square, you know of this business, and you know the explosion that's happened in the past few years. As you kind of reflect on the marketing leader you were when you first started to now, and the stage the business has gone through from then till now, because I know that just because you were a marketing leader 5 years ago, there's no guarantee you'd be the same one to be in the seat the next year or the next year or the next year. Yet you, Lauren, you figured out a way to, to plant your flag in the ground each year as, hey, I am the one to be the marketing leader. And so I'm just curious to hear your thoughts anecdotally around the evolution of you. Like, what kind of marketing leader and human being have you kind of evolved to and had to become to now sit here as global marketing leader of comms and marketing at Square?
That's a great question. I would say a lot. I think it starts with a few things. One is that I love learning, and I think that like being open to doing things in new and different ways, and that's very much like a part of Square's culture and DNA that I really love. And so everyone at every level is really encouraged to challenge anyone and say, "Hey, I don't know if you're thinking about this the right way." And I think if I reflect back on the kind of leader that I was 5 years ago, I mean, certainly I've learned a lot. I think I've learned to trust my intuition and my gut instinct more now than I did then. And I also think I'm way more open to doing things in a way that's different than how I've done them in the past. And I think those are probably the two biggest things. Like, I am open for learning pretty much all the time. It's actually one of my favorite things when someone says to me, "I don't think you're thinking about this the right way. Have you thought about it like that?" And sometimes we disagree, and I'll say, "Well, that's interesting, but here's why I think about it that way." And sometimes it really is a really interesting epiphany for me where someone will bring a point of view to the table that I wasn't considering that really makes me rethink how I do work. And I think probably in the past I was less open to that. And I think that's just like very much how Square operates. It's one of my favorite things about Square. And I think it makes me better all the time at what I'm doing, because there's people who are really junior people on the team will just say, "I think you're wrong about this." And I love it. Like, why? Tell me more. I want to hear about that. So I think there's that. We're always tweaking our operating model. We work in really unique ways. Product marketing sits in the product teams, creative comms, and there's a lot of central components that sit within my team. There's always sort of these fine lines in the sand of like, where are the handoff points? What are product teams doing? What are we doing? How are we communicating with them? As I said, Square's business is complex. We have a lot of products. Now we have a lot of products in a lot of countries. So when you take all those factors, probably the old me was a little bit more controlling than I am now. But now when the business scales so much, you have no choice but to let go of certain facets and then say, "This is the part that you do, and I trust you to do that." If product marketers are going to define audience segments and tell us when we have product market fit, I trust that. That's their role in our go-to-market motion. And so I think a lot of that has also changed throughout the years. Like, we work in this very hybrid, centralized and decentralized way that if you asked me 5 years ago, I probably would have said, "That seems crazy. I can't imagine working in that way." But like, I think when we started to work in that way, I thought, well, I've never worked in that way before, but I'm happy to try it. And I think there's a lot of things that work really well about how we work, but we also will go back and say, "Hey, what's working, what's not working, and how do we continue to make things better as a collective organization?" So I think those are probably the two biggest things, but I do feel like I've learned a lot. I think the other probably really interesting thing is, prior to the pandemic, I think Square's business was really predictable. Like, we knew when we put money into the machine, like what would be coming out. And it's obviously, I think I'm definitely not alone in saying this, but it's a lot harder for marketers now. There's macro headwinds. Obviously, our customers, small business owners, were impacted during the shutdowns, and they continued to be impacted by COVID, by employees being sick, by supply constraints, by inflation. And so there's all of these sort of extra dynamics that make the job, I think, harder and more interesting that we didn't have to contend with in the past. And so we've been forced to become much more agile, really constantly looking at our investments, what's paying off, where we see things coming to fruition in the way that we expected and where we don't, and how do we move quickly as a team to lean in or pull back when things aren't panning out the way that we planned.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to this channel for more great marketing interviews with today's top industry leaders. And thank you to our partners at Salesforce. Salesforce brings marketing and engagement together. Head over to salesforce.com/marketing.